Ethiopian officials said that the chief of staff of the army was shot and killed by his bodyguard last Saturday, hours after what officials described as an attempted coup in Ethiopia's Amhara state. A spokeswoman for Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said that Army Chief Siare Makonnen and a retired general were killed in a coordinated attack in General Siare's home. Officials said that Amhara State President Ambachu Mekonnen and his advisor were shot dead in the regional capital of Bahir Dar on Saturday evening. The Prime Minister's office named the person behind the foiled coup as Amhara State Security Head General Asminaw Tsige. Internet access in much of the country was shut down following the weekend events. As more information continues to unfold on this issue, there are still many more questions to be answered. And for that, I reached Zelelam Zacharias, an Ethiopian journalist and political analyst based in Montreal, Canada. I asked Mr. Zelelam to provide us with some context on Saturday's events, some of the people involved, and what this attempted coup means in the country's politics. What is the situation like as it stands?
Okay, well, as it stands presently, there appears to be a sort of eerie calm over the country. Thus far, we have been told, or the official government narrative is that there was a coup, an attempted coup in the regional state of the Amhara region, which is in the north of the country. And at the same time, simultaneously, there was a successful assassination of two very high-ranking military officers in Addis Ababa. So the two attacks, the coup and the assassinations, they happened about something like 150 kilometers apart, away from each other. But the government is claiming that they are linked. Two events are linked. So
let me ask you, Zelelam, then to explain to us who are some of the main players or some of the main figures, and what role do they play? But most importantly, what is the significance of their participation in this attempted coup?
Okay, well, right now, the government has pointed its fingers at a member of the Amhara regional security apparatus, an individual known as Brigadier General Asminaw Tsige. He has a background in the Ethiopian military and was actually detained for around 9 years for similar charges, an attempted coup in 2009 by the previous administration. So he was brought in. The government bringing him in was supposed to be part of reconciliatory measures. Well, the chief of staff, which we will now have to refer to as the late chief of staff, as his death has been confirmed. General Siare Makonnen was among the new guard of Ethiopian security apparatus officials. Last year, when the new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power, he oversaw a cleaning out of many military and intelligence officials, most of whom were dismissed. Many others have been arrested and charged with human rights abuses and murder. And General Siare was among the new faces to thrive in the sort of vacuum of sorts and attempt to freshen up the security apparatus without the baggage of those from the previous administration.
From the former regime.
Yes, he was attempting to start things anew and break away, you can say, from the security apparatus that was appointed during the era of Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, former Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. Many considered him one of the main players during the reform era, and his death for them would be a serious critical blow.
And what can you tell us about Dr. Ambachu Mekonnen, the Amhara regional state president who was killed in this attempted coup?
Okay, Dr. Ambachu Mekonnen is similarly, like General Siare, similarly seen as a member of one of the reform agents, one of the new breed of politicians that came in the post-TPLF era as a result of the demise of the previous administration. So he also had a strong section of the Amhara constituency backing him, and was a very, very vocal proponent for the Amhara people's rights and for preventing a return to the previous era of authoritarianism. So similarly, he was one of Prime Minister Abiy's recruits, and Prime Minister Abiy will really have to focus on rebounding for this, because both him and General Saara Makonnen will be very, very difficult to replace.
Zelelam, let me ask you this. Is there something that we're missing as we report on this story? Do you believe that there is more to this story than what the Prime Minister's statement says or what we're hearing from official circles in Ethiopia?
You're right. There are actually plenty of things missing. Well, first of all, for the government to release a statement clarifying exactly what happened, it took them nearly 15 hours or so. After the initial violence, there were outages of internet service, and the Prime Minister's office remained mum on the issue and said nothing until the next day. That in itself was suspicious enough. And secondly, many people I've communicated with simply don't buy the narrative that there was a possible regional coup attempt in the Amhara region, simply because even had the coup been successful, you would still have to deal with federal forces from Addis Ababa being deployed and taking over. Simply assassinating the president of the region and taking over several government offices is no guarantee whatsoever of gaining strongholds of the region.
Right.
So personally, I don't think it would almost be foolhardy to attempt it. And I suggest there's more than what we are being told, but of course, to say what I believe it is would be, at this point, mere speculation.
Now, Prime Minister Ahmed, who is in his second year in office, has had to make some really pretty difficult choices as he steers the nation through some popular and sometimes difficult reforms. What does this moment mean for him and his administration as he continues to make these political and economic reforms in the country?
I think this should be a turning point for the Prime Minister in the sense that he has made headlines over the past few months, even a year, for his shuttle diplomacy and for a lot of the work he has done in the region, most recently in Sudan, mediating a deal between the different parties there, as well as Eritrea and Kenya, Somalia. And I think right now he needs to realize that there is a serious state of alarm in his country. There's a brewing domestic crisis. It's been brewing for around a year or so, right. And many argue that he has somehow neglected it.
So as he's been concentrating on the foreign policy, there are some things internally that he needs to reckon with.
That goes without saying. It's been like this for about a year. Many of his critics actually have been lamenting his lack of action on the domestic front, but I think this has truly hit close to home. Some of his closest allies lost their lives. So I believe we will finally see a change in tactics from him. And it's about time. Somebody
on Twitter said that based on what has been brewing, some of the tensions that have been brewing over the past year, that this was not a surprise. Were you surprised at the news that there was, whatever this is, whether there was an attempted coup in the Amhara region or whatever it is that is we don't know about? Like, were you surprised at it?
Well, I don't think anyone could have truly said that they had seen this coming. I mean, I was obviously surprised, like most people. But however, what I can say I did see coming was a disintegration of order and the breakout of chaos, because just across in the Oromia region, for instance, we have an insurgency that has not been formally dealt with. We're still seeing the residue of the formerly ousted regional government in the Somali region. What's going on there is on a much smaller scale. And of course, right now, Ethiopia has the largest number in the world of internally displaced people, for everything from ethnic clashes to people fleeing political instability in their own country. This has not been dealt with. So as long as there isn't a firm grasp on the matter, and as long as the government sort of dilly-dallies on it, and then, of course, over the course of the next year, one could have easily predicted that things would have deteriorated. But personally, I did not see things getting this bad, this quick.
As an observer, what are you watching for? What are you looking at in terms of how the Prime Minister responds to this situation going forward?
Well, my sources on the ground have been reporting of arrests of people who we had assumed were key members of the Abiy government, primarily in the intelligence forces. So I'm wondering if this will spark a cleanup of sorts of military and intelligence personnel. Was there someone working within government to instigate what we saw yesterday? There should be more. There must be greater clarity, because right now the government, if it maintains its current narrative, as you mentioned, is a very leaky one. I think it can cause him to lose a degree of confidence, the people's confidence. So I do believe that the government will have to act, probably have to oversee some internal reform once again, which, as painful as it sounds, might be. The lack of that might have been what was catalyst to yesterday's violence. So that is what I'm expecting to see from the government from this point on. To simply say we are in control, we're handling the situation, will not work any longer.
Now, is there any news on the whereabouts of the mastermind behind this coup, Brigadier General Asmina Otege?
No one can say for sure. The Prime Minister's office, in their communique, they only spoke of having made arrests of people linked to the coup attempts, but they did not specifically mention anything about the general himself. So thus far, there's nothing that I can confirm. Of course, there's word of mouth and rumors here and there, but I can't provide you with anything solid thus far.
Right. Zelelam, thank you very much. Appreciate you talking to us this morning.
No problem. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That is Zacharias Zelelam, an Ethiopian journalist and political analyst. I reached him in Montreal, Canada.